Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, AlbyMTG, and today we'll be going over the metagame breakdown for Pro Tour Dominaria. Pro Tour Dominaria, of course, is happening actually right now. They just got done with announcing who the top 8 were, so we now know what the top 8 decks are going to be as well, so I'll mention those later on in the video as we go through these different decks and these different categories here of decks that people were playing at the Pro Tour. We'll go ahead and talk about what we can expect to see from tomorrow when the top 8 play, and of course my prediction for what I think will take it down now that we know what the top 8 decks are. Of course, I have 2 slides here, so this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different lists here on this one, and then we have an additional, I believe, 8 plus some additional information about other decks that people were playing as well. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it. Of course, if you guys want to see more videos like this, go ahead and let me know, and I'll be sure to make them for future Pro Tours if you guys end up enjoying these. So for this Pro Tour, we ended up seeing Red-Black Aggro being the most popular deck with 65 copies on day 1. However, it was not the most successful deck there. Red-Black Mid-Range actually made up most of the meta when we came to day 2, where you can see 43 copies of Red-Black Mid-Range on day 2 compared to only 41 copies of Red-Black Aggro, meaning that the conversion rates were much more in favor of the mid-range decks, which makes sense. The mid-range decks do beat the aggro decks, so if the mid-range deck was playing against something like mono-red aggro, I would expect the mid-range deck to win, and if they were playing against red-black aggro, I would again expect the mid-range deck to win. That's just kind of how Magic generally works. And so notably, 7 of the 8 decks in the top 8 are within these 3 categories right here. These red-black or just red-based, aggressive, good card strategies. A lot of Goblin Chain Whirlers in the top 8. I believe that we're looking at something like 20 plus copies of Goblin Chain Whirler in the top 8, which is kind of impressive. The card has been very, very powerful throughout its time so far in Standard, and it's only been here for a month, and it still has plenty of time remaining in Standard. So it wouldn't surprise me if Goblin Chain Whirler just continued to dominate for as long as it's in Standard. The next deck that we're looking at here is Steel Leaf Stompy, which had 40 copies on day 1, being the 4th most popular deck, but then as we get to day 2, you can see only 23 copies made it through, so only a 57.5% conversion rate, which is not really what you want. Generally, if you're above about 65 to 70% conversion rate, that's generally considered to be a pretty good conversion rate for the Pro Tour. So seeing some of these decks here like White-Black Benalia only at 48.3%, that's a very poor conversion rate, an extremely poor conversion rate in all honesty. That's quite bad, and it goes to show you that maybe White-Black Benalia just isn't where you want to be in the current Dominaria meta. As we get down here though to White-Blue Teferi as well, this White-Blue control-based deck featuring Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, you can see it also had a not great conversion rate, only 22 decks in day 1, so I think what ended up happening was that a lot of people were expecting to see White-Blue Teferi, and because of that they chose to play decks that beat White-Blue Teferi instead of playing the deck that most people were scared of going into the event, and that basically led to all of the aggro decks seeing a lot of popularity, the red-black and the mono-red version, while White-Blue Teferi saw a lot less of an interest for people to play it here at the Pro Tour. And then also notably, the poor conversion rate was just kind of because the White-Blue Teferi decks can't really do a whole lot against mono-red aggro or red-black aggro, so it doesn't surprise me to see that the poor conversion rate was there because of the fact that they lose to these aggressive decks that made up the majority of the meta. And then finally, the last one here on this list here is Esper Control. Esper Control actually is the final deck in the top 8, so we're looking at 7 copies of this red-black aggro, red-black mid-range, and mono-red aggro, 7 copies of these red-based strategies, and then 1 copy of Esper Control in your top 8 for Pro Tour Dominaria. Again, I personally think that red-black mid-range just has this pretty much locked up. If Esper Control can face the mid-range decks, I think Esper Control has a chance, but Esper Control is just going to lose to the aggro decks, so notably, it's basically a rock paper scissors match at this point, where aggro beats control, control beats mid-range, and then mid-range beats aggro. So you're basically just looking at a rock paper scissors match in this top 8, and I'd be very surprised if we didn't see matches in the top 8 tomorrow going exactly as I'm predicting here with this rock paper scissors sort of game that we're going to end up seeing. So notably, White Blue Teferi, not the best at the Pro Tour. A lot of people were expecting it to do much better, and were expecting it to be kind of the bogeyman, and then because of all the hype around it, it ended up just doing extremely poorly because people were prepared to beat it. If we go ahead and take a look here at the next page of statistics we have here, they actually have White Blue Control different from White Blue Teferi, and they also have White Blue Approach different from White Blue Teferi. So I'm not quite sure what specifically the differences are, whether White Blue Control features like maybe Lyra Dawnbringer and like Torrential Gearhulk as win conditions, while White Blue Teferi only features like Gideon and Teferi. I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of how they separated those, and then White Blue Approach, of course, winning via Approach of the Second Sons. So these are the decks that had much less of a representation at the Pro Tour. White Blue Control, again, like I said, not really sure what differentiates it, but I'm assuming it's just that it uses Lyra and Lyra and Torrential Gearhulk more as win conditions in comparison to the others. Blue-Black Midrange, this was a deck that I put Sultai Midrange on my list for the top 5 decks that I thought were going to have good performances at the Pro Tour, and I said that some people might just take away the green and then just run blue-black mid-range instead, and that's what people ended up doing. And you can see it had like a reasonable conversion rate, 64.3%, not the best, but it's fine. Again, like I said, you really want about 65 to 70% for your conversion rates to be considered, you know, decent. So blue-black mid-range, I thought it was a solid deck. I probably would have played something similar if I was, you know, to be at the Pro Tour. I think that's kind of where I would have liked to have been, and we saw Kevin Jones play his blue-black mid-range deck for about 3 feature matches in a row. I believe the last 3 rounds feature him playing the blue-black mid-range list that he came to the Pro Tour with, and he did very well with that as well. So I think that was a fantastic choice, and I probably would have ended up playing the same. But nonetheless, still only 14 copies in day 1, but a decent conversion rate, and 9 copies making it to day 2. The next deck here was Green-Blue Karn. This deck, a lot of people got super hyped when they saw it because it was kind of like an underrated deck. No one had come up with this idea before we got here to the Pro Tour. And basically what this Green-Blue Karn deck was just a bunch of artifact synergies. You would play Karn as kind of your win condition, and then you also had cards like Walking Ballista, Glint Nest Crane, and you were even playing the Green Implement, which can be sacrificed to draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So this deck ended up not being great. You can see 11 people making it on day 1, and then 5 people only making it on day 2, so a conversion rate again of less than 50%, which is quite poor. And I think what really stands out to me about the Green-Blue Karn deck is that the people who were playing it were all like gold and platinum pros. These were not bad players playing this deck. These were all, well, of course, everyone at the Pro Tour is a good player. I think that goes without, you know, being said. But the gold and platinum pros are the ones who are kind of above at a higher tier compared to the others that play on the Pro Tour. And many of them were the ones playing the Green-Blue Karn deck. And if only 5 of them could make it to day 2, I feel like the deck was just bad. I personally just kind of feel that way after watching it play out. Like, sure, it's a cool idea for a deck, but it just ended up not being great. Blue-Black Control, we can see here then following at 10 copies on day 1, down to 7 on day 2, 70% conversion rate. Again, like I said earlier, for probably several times in this video, 70% is just like a reasonable conversion rate, so not too bad for Blue-Black Control. Then Mono-Black Control, which I was kind of surprised to see. I felt like most people would want blue-based control decks, but we saw that Mono-Black Control also featured Dreadshade, which was very, very nice. People were saying that, I believe they did a deck tech with Willie Adel from Brazil. He's a Hall of Famer in the Pro Tour, and he talked about how this mono-black control deck in Standard works sort of like Jund does in Modern, where you have a bunch of similar cards where you're just trying to disrupt your opponent's game plan, and then you play a powerful creature. He was comparing Dreadshade to Tarmogoyf in the deck. So I think this deck has a lot of potential as well, even though it had, again, a very poor conversion rate at 44.4%. This is a deck that I think has a lot of potential, and that I could see with some additional tuning and some additional time, I think mono black control could be a really fun one to play. And then we're looking at Esper Benalia, which I believe had the highest conversion rate of any deck here, where you can see 7 on day 1 and 6 on day 2. Just a very cool deck featuring History of Benalia, the saga from Dominaria, which of course is just a fantastic card. And again, that I'm not quite sure what separates history or Esper Benalia from Esper Midrange, whether it's just the lack of History of Benalia in the Esper midrange decks, but I feel like most midrange decks would just want it anyway, so I'm not 100% sure what differentiates Esper Benalia from Esper midrange, but they both seemed like they were pretty strong decks. And then again, White-Blue Approach, where your main win condition is Approach of the Second Sun. And then when we look at the final, there were 64 copies of decks that did not fit into any of these categories, making up 13.9% of day 1, and then only 33 copies on day 2 for these kind of rogue decks, I guess you could say, which was 11.3% of the day 2 meta with a 51.6 conversion rate. Again, I probably should have said this beforehand. This says live coverage resumes in 54 seconds. I took these screenshots as I was watching the Pro Tour because I thought that they were, I love it when they post these kind of statistics, and I thought that it would be a great idea to go over these and then just kind of give you guys my opinions on each of the decks that we saw here at the Pro Tour. So just kind of ignore the fact that it says live coverage resumes in 54 seconds. That was just part of me screenshotting the picture during the live stream. So again, I think my prediction for your winner tomorrow is going to be red-black midrange. I think Esper Control will end up losing to one of the aggro decks, and then midrange will just be able to gobble up the aggro decks for the remainder of the top 8. That wouldn't really surprise me too much. So again, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Let me know down below in the comments what's your prediction for the deck that's going to win the top 8. Is there a specific player in particular that you think is going to win now that we know who the top 8 players are? Go ahead and let me know down below in the comments. And again, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know, and then I can do something like this for future Pro Tours to come. And I'll make sure that I get this kind of information. That way I can statistically go over it in these videos like I'm doing right now. So again, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Leave a like if you guys enjoyed, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will see you guys here tomorrow for yet another Magic the Gathering video.